I had my pelvis broken in 6 places over the course of 4 surgeries at 16, 17, 18, 19. And during that time, my sleep was, depressingly, is sleeping on the floor of a shopping centre on a night shoot the other day. But then out of it, what are you going to do about that? And for me, I've had to do things about it, which have created a foundation that have benefited my life in other ways.
So there's another great tip. So full marks from the sleep specialist. Welcome to Sleep On with the Sleep Charity. I'm Dr. Sophie Bostock, sleep scientist and sleep evangelist. I'm on a mission to help millions of people to unlock the power of sleep for health, happiness, and peak performance. In each episode, I speak with a guest to uncover the science and stories behind better sleep, exploring what works, what doesn't, and how we can all build habits that support deeper rest. Today, I'm joined by Jean Campbell. Jean is a British supermodel and podcast host known for her work with some of the world's leading fashion houses. But behind the glamorous photos, Jean's journey with chronic pain began as a teenager, navigating countless surgeries, rehabilitation, and a career in a physically demanding industry with the normal demands of becoming an adult. Through her podcast, I'm Fine, Jean creates a space for honest conversations about pain, mental health, and the unseen challenges people face, including the way it disrupts rest and daily life. In this episode, we'll explore Jean's experiences of pain, how it's related to her sleep, the strategies she's discovered along the way, and the lessons from creating a platform that speaks to everyone struggling with pain while coping with invisible challenges. Jean, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to Sleep On.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
So as a little bit of a warm-up, we like to start with some quick-fire questions.
Okay.
There are no rules other than don't think too much.
Okay.
Okay. If I say sleep, what comes to mind for you?
Bed.
Early bird or night owl?
I'm a bit of a night owl.
Mm-hmm. What's your favourite way to detach and unwind before bed?
Putting my phone away and maybe listening to ambient sounds or doing meditation.
Okay. What's one thing you can't sleep without?
I listen to rain music, like rain sounds.
Yep. And can you tell us one memorable place that you've slept and why it stays in your mind?
The thing that comes to mind depressingly is sleeping on the floor of a shopping centre on a night shoot the other day. But that's actually not maybe what you're looking for.
No, it's memorable. And actually it gives us a glimpse into your life. And I really wanted to start off with what life is actually like in fashion, because I'm quite embarrassed to admit this, but my entire knowledge of the fashion industry is gleaned from films like Devil Wears Prada, Emily in Paris. And fashion always seems really quite frantic, really quite pressured. Yeah. And I was hoping that you could sort of open the door on what it's really like to work as a model.
Oh, well, I mean, I would start by saying that everyone's experience is different. And, you know, I feel very lucky to have the job that I have, but I've also done it for 13 years. So I started really young and I didn't really know what I was getting into. And I do think that it's this amazing world where it's about creating fantasy and pushing boundaries creatively, and so that's a really amazing thing to kind of observe and be a part of. And obviously I'm just part of someone's idea. It is quite a unpredictable life, I would say. So there were times when I'd be on a plane every week going across time zones, which was not great for my sleep. But obviously at the time I was like a teenager, so I didn't really think about sleep. But yeah, no, it's so currently it's Fashion Week, Fashion Month, which I'm actually not doing this time, but that can be quite a kind of busy time. But I do love it, and it's kind of like opened up my world in a way that I never could have imagined.
I suppose the visions that we get to see just a glimpse, a flash in time of what things are like. And I suppose what I'm especially interested in is how it feels. You know, when you're on a shoot, do you get to relax, or do you feel like you're always on?
I think, you know, it's more than just showing up and having your picture taken. I think there's so much preparation and planning and everything that goes into every single shoot or show or whatever that you're showing up to. So you kind of have, your job is to show up and like deliver something or interpret their vision, and kind of it's the kind of like crescendo of the thing that they've been building up to.
Yeah, I'm feeling like there's a lot of effort. There's a lot of people who've had this specific thing in mind, and well, in my mind, that would create pressure. I
think definitely, like when I was younger, I felt pressure because I was probably not professional. But I think when it's going well, that's great. But obviously, I think what's been important for me is to remove myself, like personally, from me as a model, because obviously there are going to be moments where it's not working, and then it's like the hair's too blonde, or you're wearing a lacy outfit and it's too sensual or something, but it's not really about you, you know? But you could think that it's about you if you don't have that sense of separation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think, you know, I've heard you talk about putting on a character as a model, and maybe that's quite a good self-defense, that you're sort of showing up as someone else. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because actually showing up and it being like, we're photographing you as you is actually more weird than like, okay, the references from this time, and here are the pictures.
You're wearing a costume rather than being
I can then be that.
So that's kind of interesting, given that you've then come on to become this advocate around pain, mental health. You know, you've really got an amazing voice, which we'll come on to.
Thank you.
For me, that feels like quite a contrast from showing up as a model and being someone else. Do you think, was it hard to make that transition from being, you know, very beautiful, but almost quiet, not having a voice,
to invisible?
Invisible.
Yes. I think when it came to like starting the work that I do with the podcast and stuff, I was really motivated by wanting to create a kind of resource, and with the knowledge of how lonely the journey with pain can be and how isolating that can feel. So through having conversations, that was kind of like my first attempt at creating a resource, because you could get hope or identification or whatever, find out what worked for them. But I had focused so much on like the excitement of the guests, the other people who were going to listen, I didn't really register that actually it would be really exposing for me. And so I remember like a week before the first episode coming out, suddenly being like, oh my God, help, I'm so exposed. But I think it's like, it's not my natural kind of thing to want to be open, which is ironic because the podcast is kind of about that. But I think it was like a worthwhile risk to like expose myself so that I could do that stuff.
Well, definitely.
And it's like not that bad in the end.
For those people who've listened to it, it's absolutely worthwhile, and we'll come on to it. But you mentioned, you know, you used the term "my journey with pain."
Yeah.
And I think for those people who haven't heard your story, it would be really helpful if you didn't mind kind of walking us back. My first question was going to be, was there a time where you remember not being in pain?
Oh, yeah. I'm like, how long have you got? So with your first question, yes. I used to be, so when I was younger, like teenager, whatever, I was really sporty, and that was like a really important outlet for me. I loved being free in my body. And it also helped me with studying and stuff. So, because I naturally have quite a lot of energy, which is relevant to the sleep thing. And so I found that I would, it was a necessary regulation thing for me to be active. And yeah, I remember I obviously had the kind of pushing of the boundary, say like running, you kind of find your edge where you're really out of breath and uncomfortable, and then you're really stiff the next day. But that's a kind of good pain.
Yeah.
But so yeah, I do remember times of not being in pain. And then I had an accident when I was 12 where I had a skiing crash and I knocked the right side of my body. I like landed and my right arm like flung backwards and like ripped all the muscles and tendons off my growth plate with some of my growth plate.
So a pretty traumatic accident.
Yeah, but it was also something that I recovered from. Do you know what I mean? It was it was a complicated injury, but it was something I recovered from.
So you had pain, but you knew that there was going to be an end point.
Yeah.
They told you you're going to make a good recovery.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what we tell people.
Yeah, and you're just like, whatever. Okay, I'll just do it. But in the process of kind of that impact that my body experienced, it sped up the rate at which a genetic condition started presenting symptoms. Right. So the genetic condition is hip dysplasia, the original one. And so that basically means that you have shallow hip sockets. So the kind of impact through your hips deteriorates the bone. And so I kind of started experiencing pain in my right hip when I was like 14, and I kind of didn't think anything about it. And then by 15, it was much worse. And then I then got a diagnosis after like scans, And then at 16, I had to wait for my growth plate to fuse.
So during this time, so you've been a very active teenager.
Yeah.
You're experiencing pain for the first time. That's several years that you've just sort of skipped over there. Did that have an impact on your sleep at that time, or was it just during the day?
So with the accident,
I suppose, and then afterwards.
So I wouldn't say like the initial accident so much. Like I don't remember when I was little, I used to wake up at like 4 a.m. So annoying. Like waking up all my siblings and my parents. Hey. But I was always like an early bird. And then I developed quite late in terms of like going through puberty and whatever. And it was only really when I had the hip surgeries. So I had 6 No, I didn't. I had my pelvis broken in 6 places over the course of 4 surgeries at 16, 17, 18, 19. And during that time, my sleep was, it made me feel really insane actually, because I would be in bed at like 11 or whatever, 10:30, 11 in school. And then I wouldn't go to sleep. I remember it being like 3 a.m. a lot. And kind of lying there like, oh my God.
And at this point, you can't presumably move very much. I mean, could you get up?
Well, this was when I was actually not in the like acuteness of the surgeries. So when I was recovering from the surgery, so not able, I would essentially have to take a painkiller to get to sleep.
Yeah.
so then I would fall asleep, and I needed to stay asleep because otherwise I would wake up and it would have worn off.
So with sedatives, you could get through the actual operations, but this is actually that longer term recovery, perhaps in between surgeries. You're waking up a lot in the middle of the night.
Yeah, I would wake up. Well, no, even recovering from the surgeries, I would sometimes wake up because there would be some noise. And then my whole body would be like screaming. And I couldn't move because it was my pelvis that was broken. So I'd be like barricaded in with pillows. And it made me really like an angry, like really angry.
Yeah,
like I remember the dog waking me up once and being like, I literally want to kill the dog. You know?
It's a fine line between what is the impact of lack of sleep and what is the impact of pain. I broke my collarbone last May, and I became a very grumpy person.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that actually was I was dealing with pain and I didn't really realise. I was going to ask you, how did that impact on your relationships with people around you? So you've got both the pain and the sleep deprivation.
Yeah. Well, you need, obviously your body is in like a recovery mode when you're sleeping. But then part of what you need for sleep is to be able to like relax. And so I would say that experiencing constant ongoing pain. Not that my situation's like so much worse than other people's or whatever, but for me, it meant that I was not regulated. Like my usual kind of window of tolerance, which could be quite big usually, was kind of like shrunken because I was essentially trying to manage physical pain, psychological discomfort with the whole thing, the kind of fear, constant fear. I feel like the level of like adrenaline and cortisol running around your body for the purpose of dealing with stress, then you finish your day and you get into bed and you're pumped full of that stuff. And then you're lying there just ruminating, you know? So I would say like my relationship, sorry, I went on a tangent there. My relationships, you know, it's hard when you're in a place of need because you need people. And I don't like having needs. Lots of people probably don't like having needs. But I felt quite guilty for that. But then you sort of feel helpless, which makes you feel frustrated. And then sometimes that would come into the relationship.
Something like a bit of a spiral. So, you're constantly stressed. You're awake at night. You don't want to be demanding. You're more impatient because of this physiological arousal that's both preventing you sleeping and making you quite irritable with other people, I imagine.
But then I also think, like, just thinking about the times, not in the acuteness of recovering from the surgeries, the times when, so I'm not recovering from surgery, but chronic pain's still part of my life, but it's a manageable thing now. But the times when you're trying to get to sleep, and often it's when you really need to sleep, I find that I can't. And that thing of being awake, counting the hours till we have to wake up, and really wanting to go to sleep, but almost like panicking about the fact that you can't, feel so empirically alone. And I think there's something about like the space that you're in at nighttime to in the morning or whatever, where your perspective can be slightly skewed. It feels a bit more like scary than,
Yeah, I think that idea of loneliness is so important because you are alone in that room and you feel lonely, but actually that experience of sleep loss associated with chronic pain is incredibly common, and it depends on which survey you look at, but between 50% and 90% of people who are living with chronic pain will also have poor sleep. So there's a lot of people out there that are really struggling. I wondered if did you tell people? Did you get help with that? Or is it something you really had to deal with on your own?
Oh, I didn't really, probably giving you all the wrong answers. I didn't really think of it as like, I'm having a bout of insomnia or I'm not sleeping. Like all my friends know that I'm haven't been a good sleeper. And they would sometimes, like I did Pilates with my friend this morning. She was like, how many hours of sleep do you, because we were talking about this, she was like, how many hours do you function on? And I can function on 7, but what I actually need is like 9 to feel good. And so, no, to answer your question, I didn't like do anything about it. But, you know, and there were times where like I've actually had the thing where I'll like be lying in bed, I have something important the next day, and I'll stay awake all night, unable to get to sleep, which is like torture. But now I have kind of like rituals that I do that, I don't want to be like droning on about the problems for the whole thing.
I think a lot of people will empathise with where you've been. I think it's really interesting how you say, you know, it's not that I necessarily had insomnia or recognise yourself as having insomnia, and yet you've had some pretty tiresome experiences with not sleeping, but it's almost like you've kind of just taken it as part and parcel, just something that you get on with. And I mean, that makes me kind of want to give you a hug, but also kind of say, you know, there's lots of things that can be done to help. So I suppose, yes, the question is, what are the rituals or the things that have helped you to cope, whether those have improved your sleep or your pain, and how those have worked together?
Well, I think for me, like managing the pain is really important. And I do that through meditation and low intensity exercise and journaling, mindfulness practices, basically, not letting it just like rule my life. And
for people who haven't done mindfulness themselves, how does that help? Like, what is it? How does it help you? Because I think actually a lot of people have different experiences of mindfulness meditation. So I'm just intrigued, like, what are the benefits for you from that practice?
So I think a lot of it is to do with awareness. So like some of the beliefs that I developed through the process of, you know, going through the pain or the experiences would be a sense of like, I'm incapable, I'm unworthy, I'm a burden, all of that stuff. And so having awareness about that, and then like, for me, journaling an alternative. So I feel like this, but actually, what are the things that I'm grateful for? When was a time when someone was grateful for me? That's like the best kind of emotion, is that sense of gratitude for when someone was grateful for you, which is obviously the opposite of I'm a burden and I can't do stuff, you know? So that's one thing, is having the awareness of the head on my shoulders and the effect of my circumstances on my state of mind.
And with that journaling, would you do that at a set time of day? Is that a morning thing?
Usually in the evening. The other thing that I'll do is I'll write just like whatever, you know, imagining no one's going to see it, thank God. Just write 3 pages and like and kind of like tune in, essentially. The meditation for me was not something I found easy. I was always someone who was like, oh, I can't sit still, so why would I do that? Exactly why I needed to do it. And that's given me a sense of separation between what's happening around me and how I feel. So like separating my thoughts from like how I actually am, like observing the thoughts. So in that process, also reconnecting to my body, but like maybe separating myself from the fact that I'm in pain, because maybe I don't want to be in my body because it's painful. Do you see what I mean?
So I think for a lot of people, mindfulness sounds obviously pretty woo-woo, and this idea of awareness sometimes can be confusing, because if you listen to some people talk about mindfulness, they say, well, you know, you focus on the present. But if you're in pain,
anywhere but the present,
on that, exactly. People want to kind of numb that and not feel that.
Or you dissociate. Because it's like a natural survival response. But I didn't find, so I'll list, you can like YouTube body scan, or there's an app called Insight Timer, which has like a massive library of meditations and stuff. Yoga has helped me a lot as well, because it's like moving meditation, which I didn't know before. I actually tried this app the other day called Luminate, which works with like light. So you close your eyes, and essentially what all meditation is focusing on something and not being in your thoughts.
I think that's a great way to explain it.
Because I used to think, you need to be like levitating to be meditating.
But it's like a muscle of concentration, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's also a means
to
do what you want to do in life. But with those things have been important for me, and then the low intensity exercises I mentioned. But with the sleep, things like how much caffeine I drink. I know it's annoying, but like if I'm going through a stage of maybe being a bit more stressed, there's lots going on, I need to be mindful of how much caffeine I'm drinking. So not drinking, if I'm not sleeping well, I'm not drinking coffee after midday, or maybe I'm not drinking it at all. And
I'm slightly giggling because a good friend of mine mentioned this to me the other day. Said, "Yeah, I've really been focusing on my sleep," and I'm pretty sure that I told her about 5 years ago that maybe having all the cups of tea before bed was not a great idea.
Because you're like a yo-yo.
But we have to keep saying these things. You know, you say, "Oh, I'm sorry."
Well, it sounds so rudimentary, but it's true.
But it's true. Great. Thank you for sharing that.
So for me, if I'm not sleeping well, I'm actually cutting out caffeine.
Right.
Obviously, the downside of that is that you're not sleeping well, so you kind of want caffeine to wake up. But I would replace that with like a cold shower or some kind of like morning wake up thing. And I try not to have my phone anywhere near me. Like I do sleep with it in the room because of my alarm, but I'll plug it in on the other side. And I think that feels really important for me to tune out of whatever I'm distracting myself with.
Do you still have those middle of the night wakings?
No, I would only wake up in the middle of the night when the pain was really, really bad. But what I do sometimes have is I'll be lying in bed and I will find it hard to get to sleep. And I think the difference for me now when I'm in that place is I'm whatever. I don't have like a meta layer of emotion about the fact that I'm not going to sleep immediately. I'm just like, okay, what am I gonna... I'll almost like choose to dream about something fun rather than the instinctive reaction, which is, I'm scared I can't get to sleep. Oh my God. What's wrong with me?
That frustration, which you now recognise, just kind of makes the cycle worse and makes you feel more stressed. So that idea of acceptance or distraction, there's a lot of visualisation techniques for a lot of people. So if you're choosing what you dream about, it's almost like simulating a dream, I guess. You're getting yourself, getting your mind into that dreamlike state.
The other thing I would say is, okay, I quite love watching series. But I've gone through phases of like watching whatever it is in bed on my laptop. And then I can I'm not disciplined. I'm like too much of a TV junkie to not want to watch the next one. And then, suddenly it's like a little bit too late or whatever. So I try and not watch stuff in bed because...
You're human.
Yeah.
And they're designed
to
hook you in.
But also then I feel like my association to going to bed is, okay, I'm ready to go to bed. Not, I'm going to hang out in bed. If I'm hanging out in bed, then I don't think of my bed as being a place to sleep.
So this is another great tip. So full marks from the sleep specialist, keeping your bed for sleep and relaxation and trying to keep the stimulation out of it.
What do you think of melatonin, out of curiosity?
So melatonin, produced naturally by the brain, fantastic hormone. We often call it the hormone of darkness.
Okay.
So it follows a circadian, a daily rhythm. And for people who have very consistent rhythms, about an hour and a half or 2 hours before bed, that's when your brain will naturally start to produce melatonin, unless there's lots of bright light. So this is why dimming the lights an hour and a half or so before bed is really important. And it helps our internal body clocks to know where they are in time. So we know when melatonin increases, that's the time when our minds and bodies start to prepare for sleep. And so a lot of people, particularly in the US and other countries where you can buy melatonin over the counter, will try and pep up their natural levels with artificial melatonin. It's sometimes a bit problematic because it's not really, well, it's not really a sedative. It doesn't really switch off an active brain, but it tends to reset the clock a little bit.
Oh, interesting.
So if you take it at the wrong time, it could disrupt your clock, but it's also not very effective as a sleeping pill. And yet a lot of people will potentially become dependent on it. So it's useful for certain purposes, and particularly for people who've got a delayed body clock where actually they really struggle to get to bed on time. Taking melatonin a couple of hours before you want to go to sleep, that can help them to reset their clocks. But I think it's quite misused very often. People kind of often think this is going to be
it's going to knock me out.
The solution that's going to knock me out.
I've actually been recently, light an incense just before getting into bed. And so when I'm closing my eyes, I can smell it.
Yeah.
And that's almost like, for me, a form of like meditation in a way, because I'm just focusing on like when I can smell it.
Focusing on an aroma. Yeah.
But it's like it's on the other side of my room, which is not that far, but it's not like in my face.
Yeah.
So sometimes I can smell it, sometimes I can't, but I'm like looking for, and I find that really relaxing.
Yeah, aromas are a very personalised thing as well. You'll find that some people really respond to a certain smell, whereas others prefer something else. And I think it's just finding that thing for you that makes your mind and body go, I really want to come on to talk about your podcast, which we have mentioned. It's called I'm Fine.
Yes.
And it's such a wonderful title because it immediately makes me think of all the times that I've said I'm fine and really not meant it because there's been a lot going on under the surface. Was that the inspiration?
Yes. It's like ironic. It's like something everyone says, something I say, which is almost like a sort of wall. Yeah. It's like, I'm fine.
Yeah. And I wonder if you're telling the other person or you're telling yourself.
I don't really know. I think it's like a state of clenching. Yeah. In a way. And so the idea with, obviously part of the whole thing of I'm fine is like, you know, all the things that we don't talk about and all the things that, you know, every single person walking around on the street has something happening in their life and you have no idea about it. And obviously the assumption is that they're doing fine because they're acting that way.
They're going to work, they're putting on a brave face. Yeah,
and it's like two things can be happening at the same time, or three or four, whatever. And in my case, not being able to talk to people, connect with people was something that like made the situation harder because of course I don't know what's best. I don't know how to manage the situation necessarily. So being able to defer to someone else who maybe hasn't been in the same situation but they might have a different perspective is a means of seeking support and progression out of the place of stuckness that you can find yourself in. And of course, the other thing is, you know, I had all of the kind of like medical care that I could have, and I'm really lucky for that. But I didn't have anyone in my life who I could kind of talk to about it, who
really had been through the same
like,
thing.
Oh, well, actually, this is what it was like for me.
Yeah.
And don't worry, it's completely fine to feel like really depressed or whatever. And so I think through hearing other people's stories, it gives you a sense of perspective, but also a sense of connection. and a sense of hope of like, oh, well, I didn't actually know that they were in that situation. And isn't that amazing that they actually turned that thing into something else, or it's given them these qualities that they wouldn't have maybe otherwise had. So, and it's the sense of community, which is obviously the opposite of being alone.
Yeah, I think that's something that comes through really strongly, and I've really enjoyed listening to a few episodes.
Thank you so much.
It really is very heartwarming, and I think hopeful, as you say. And what really strikes me is that everyone has got some kind of pain, be it physical or emotional, and very often it's very hard to tease those things apart because they're so intertwined.
Yeah, and you can see someone and you think that they're like perfect, they've got it all figured out, or why are they so, unfriendly or whatever, and you just never know. And it is in a way such a universal thing, and it's been as much of an education for me as it would be for someone else.
I was going to ask you, how you found the experience, because I think you launched it in 2024.
Yeah.
Still going, thriving.
Yeah.
And how do you think it's changed you as a person to actually host that podcast and host these conversations?
I think it's very humbling. It's really humbling, and it's a real privilege as well. But it's humbling because you realize that there's a lot of, we all have differences, but there are also a lot of similarities that you wouldn't expect. And I can sometimes feel worried, oh, I'm different to this person. They're going to think I'm this, that, and the other, or judge me, or, who are you to do that? But actually, it's a reality in all of our lives, and it doesn't have to be something that separates you or creates like an attitude of being oppositional. Because for me, when I feel scared or insecure, I might feel a bit oppositional, like, oh, I want to hide in the background and don't come near me. But actually that's never helped my situation. And so it's been really humbling, and it's been honestly crazy to talk to some of the people who I've got to speak to. I would never have imagined that my experience with pain would have allowed me or like initiated me to go and do this, because I'm in a way just like student as well.
For some people, the idea of being in pain every day sounds like the worst possible thing. But do you think you've come to a point of not only acceptance, but almost seeing, as you're saying this, I think it sounds like you're recognizing advantages even to this journey.
I mean, I wouldn't say that like it's an advantage in itself, but okay, you have the pain that is constant and really uncomfortable, and it has all of its effects and its negative impact on your state of mind, your ability to connect, blah, blah, blah. But then out of it, what are you going to do about that? And for me, I've had to do things about it, which have created a foundation that have benefited my life in other ways. So for me, it's been about like, okay, whatever the size of the pain, even though you can't see it, I need to be doing more than the size of the pain. I need to be like creating more strength or more positive things in my life to kind of offset
push it into the background.
Yeah, and then those in turn then lead to crazy things that you would never imagine. So if I was to say, has it benefited my life? Yes, because it's meant that I can connect with people on a deeper level. It's given, a greater relationship with myself that I've had to have, and therefore other people. And it's allowed me to appreciate small things more, I'd say.
Well, I definitely recommend that all our listeners go and explore I'm Fine.
Oh, thank you.
But we also like to ask our guests if there are other ways, other things that you would recommend for our listeners that might improve their sleep, perhaps something that you found particularly useful. And we would encourage you to think of just one thing that our listeners could try out and see whether it works for them.
I think the thing that feels the most important is to develop a ritual around what you do before you go to sleep. And that is completely personal to you. Hopefully it's a positive ritual. For me, that's like the meditation, the putting the phone away, the incense currently.
Yeah.
Or it could be a bath. It could be, I'm going to watch Sopranos every night before I go to sleep. Or, it's like choosing that thing which then gives you a sense of security and a cue of like, okay, I'm doing my ritual, and then my body is going to know that it's time to go to sleep.
I think that sounds like great advice. Before we wrap up, is there anything that you would like to ask me that you wish you'd asked me?
Yeah. What do you think is like the biggest affector of sleep?
I think I mentioned briefly about circadian rhythms and our daily internal rhythm. And I think the focus on before bed is really important. And I absolutely agree with you that having a ritual is really important. But I would also say the way that you start your day is probably the most neglected sleep booster. So if you have a regular wake up time, for example, if you're consistent about that, then your brain and body start to anticipate that's wake up time, and they know that 16 hours or so later, it's going to be sleep time. So sleep regularity would probably be my biggest recommendation that's most neglected from a sleep perspective.
So interesting. Oh, well, it's such a pleasure to come on. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very, very much for sharing your story. I really, really appreciate it. And I know that what you've said will resonate with an awful lot of people.
Oh, thank you. I hope so.
I think what struck me about that conversation was what a beautiful person Jean is, both inside and out. And through the bravery of opening up about her own pain and encouraging other people to share their stories, she's ended up becoming stronger as a result. And I think that's a lesson for all of us, that sometimes that openness and vulnerability can really help us both to feel good, but also to cope with pain, with struggles, and to sleep well.